You're conveniently forgetting the central argument you made ahead of the election. That was why growth was going to pay for public services. That is why you argued that Labour could be trusted. That is why you argued you were different from Jeremy Corbyn. And now you've just forgotten about that.
I have very good news. Keir Starmer is on the verge of resigning now. Everyone is demanding that he resign from his post and forget that politics exists because he is the worst Prime Minister. Now he doesn't know what to do at all. He has a very low rating, which is unlikely to ever rise. Let's figure out what happened.
For years, you told voters that Labour would fix public services, not by tax rises or borrowing, but from growth. And yesterday's budget completely undermined, ran totally counter to that argument and that promise. Why should people trust you?
What we did in the budget yesterday was do the only thing that a responsible government would do, which was to fix the damage that we inherited.
You're conveniently forgetting the central argument you made ahead of the election. That was why growth was going to pay for public services. That is why you argued that Labour could be trusted. That is why you argued you were different from Jeremy Corbyn. And now you've just forgotten about that argument.
Not at all. This is a budget for growth. And as you'll see from the growth forecasts, the significant growth in the early years, it flattens a bit, and then over 10 years there's growth again. That's not the height of our...
Everyone attacked the Labour Party for abolishing preferential subsidies for the poor and pensioners. The Chancellor is warming herself by burning her election promises, while the pensioners who voted for her are freezing in the street. It's all the fault of the giant hole in the budget left by the predecessors. Even within the party, there are those who disagree with Starmer's plans to abolish subsidies to pensioners and offer other savings options. Over the past month, the party's rating has dropped by 14%. The new government has decided to save £1.4 billion by eliminating subsidies for pensioners for winter fuel. You've seen the gorgeous outfit Starmer's wife wears. It turned out that after Starmer became the leader of the Labour Party, he was presented with expensive things worth more than £100,000. These are the priorities of our government.
Were you surprised by the scale of taxes put on businesses like yours?
Yeah, it's crazy. For an SME that's employing, why tax being employee? Because we are. Deidre & Sorin is a company of people. We employ.
So working people who are here might get smaller pay rises than they would have done because of this tax rise.
It's going to end up to the employment, yes.
One of the key innovations of the autumn budget is the increase in tax rates on capital gains. This will affect those who profit from the sale of assets. In addition, the tax benefit for investors who own shares of small and medium-sized businesses and want to sell them will change. Previously, Entrepreneurs Relief allowed business owners to pay a reduced tax rate of 10% on capital gains, up to £10 million for the entire period of ownership of shares. From the 30th of October, this limit will be reduced to £1 million. Capital gains over £1 million will be taxed at new, higher rates from 18 to 24%. From 2026, people who invest in shares on AM will receive only a 50% inheritance benefit, instead of a 100% one, as it was before. There is also positive news. In Britain, there are several programs under which the authorities provide tax incentives to investors making risky investments. This means that they invest in companies and social enterprises that are not yet listed on any recognized stock exchange. The validity period of two such programs, the Enterprise Investment Scheme and Venture Capital Trust, has been extended until 2035, which should support investors, but taking into account other restrictions, their income is unlikely to grow much. The financial situation of rental homeowners and people investing in real estate will deteriorate incredibly much. In England and Northern Ireland, the stamp duty on the purchase of a second property is increasing to 5%. Additional expenses are also expected by employers. Social Security contributions for them will increase by 1.2 percentage points. The authorities also announced a reduction in the minimum wage of employees, from which employers begin to pay contributions from £9,100 to £5,000.
They're going to make it terrible for farmers with their inheritance tax changes, and we are going to be very, very much poorer than we would have been under a Conservative government.
Yeah, well, I've already heard from loads of people this morning who call themselves working people. One man rang in and said, you know, he works in a job where he normally gets a pay rise at this time of year. His boss has told him he's had to take on 100,000 extra pounds that he has to pay in national insurance, so he can't give him a pay rise. He said his car tax has gone up, so it's costing him more to go to work. And he said, I'm a working person and I'm worse off, so why did they...
The new rules mean that inheritance tax will be levied at a rate of 20% on the value of businesses and agricultural assets exceeding £1 million, which cancels the previous tax exemption. These crazy changes will become unbearable tax charges that will lead to the bankruptcy of farms. The £1 million that must be paid before inheritance tax is paid will be absorbed by the value of the farmhouse and outbuildings, which means the rest of the land will be taxed. Rachel Reeves framed all the farmers. She deprived them of the opportunity to transfer farms to their children and ruined the future of all our large estates. This is a terrible decision that shows that the government does not understand in any way what is important for rural voters. This government has shown what its promises are worth.
They were laughing at us because they thought, oh, this is bashing Tory employers. It's going to be a problem for everybody. And then they laughed and cheered when she announced there's a penny off a pint, as if that's going to compensate for anything.
Right.
This is a Labour government that doesn't understand how the economy works.
Well, as the Sun said this morning, buy 500, get one free. I mean, that's how the pints sort of, you know, equation works out. But the other thing that I thought was unnecessarily cruel was also punishing people who have got private pensions, who might wish to pass that on to their children or to their spouse, perhaps, if they pass away before they do. And they're going to tax...
Presenting the budget, Reeves accused the Conservatives that their course had led to an accumulation of problems in the economy. According to The Guardian, the Tories spent 14 years trying to reduce the role of the state, but they could not reduce the demand for public services, even when they reduced their supply. Austerity policies have only led to the degradation of the public sphere, which has led to soaring social costs and increase in crime, worsening health problems, which then required emergency spending. Public money was spent on overcoming the crisis, not on investments. A sharp increase in taxes for employers will have a terrible effect on employees in the form of job cuts and lower wages.
It is cruel, but we knew that Labour were going to be like this. They indicated it with the VAT that they were putting on private schools, which is a tax on aspiration. This is now a tax on saving and wanting to look after your family. They do not know how to create growth. All they know is how to take money away from people. And that is one of the things that I have been emphasizing about the difference between Conservatives and Labour. People keep saying, well, there's no difference between the two parties. Now they can see that there is a big difference between the two parties. Some people thought they were getting Tony Blair's Labour or Gordon Brown's Labour. They've got Jeremy Corbyn's Labour. And we have to do everything we can to get them out.
The tax on private schools is one of the worst policies of all time. The education tax just seems wrong. Even if the government had enough funds to hire 6,500 new excellent teachers, as indicated in the manifesto, it is difficult to imagine how much this would change the situation in about 21,000 primary schools and 4,200 secondary schools in the UK. What they will definitely achieve is the displacement of barely making ends meet parents who are trying hard to pay school fees. Scholarships will also be reduced, so private schools will become even more exclusive, and the number of students in public schools will go through the roof. The goal should be to improve all our schools, not to strike at all social spheres.
I'm a cardiologist. I've been working in the NHS for a while. What we've seen for the last few years is increasing pressure, increasing environments where staff feel that they're being worked harder and harder, and the burnout question comes.
Honest discussion. We need to value staff more than they've been valued by the last government, in my view. And I think it was shocking the last government simply tried to blame the staff for the problems that the government's making. That isn't the way that you get the best out of people, create the environment in which they're having to work, and they're under a huge amount of pressure. In A&E, one of the pressures is we don't have enough scanners with the scan results coming back more quickly. That's where the real problem is, so we need to identify that. But I also want to be honest with you, we are going to be asking more of you. There's no point me standing here and saying your workload will go down. The whole point is people are living longer.
The burnout statistics are unfortunately not surprising, as is the growing trend for doctors to take time off or choose careers abroad and outside the NHS. During the GMC survey, 74,000 doctors spoke about their working conditions, quality of training, well-being at work and workload. It turned out that 32% in the field of emergency medicine are at high risk of emotional burnout. This is the highest figure among all specialties. In addition to salary increases, more attention needs to be paid to the fact that doctors feel burned out, as well as to improve support. What do you think about this video? Share your opinion in the comments. See you in the next video.